Brent, I probably should have said former Pembina Valley Hawk as well, but we left that. My boy actually dusted them twice in the Winnipeg tournament this year. So
settle down. It's Pembina Valley, first of all.
Okay,
and
sorry.
We used to come up to the PA Mintos tournament back in the day, the AAA midget hockey tournament up there. We won that thing once, just so you know. So you can get all high and mighty over there in your hot seat. Pembina Valley is a class organization. They breed some good hockey players, and obviously you didn't find out that day. Good on your boy for beating them.
Ice Mania was the name of the tournament in Prince Albert, and they had the awesome sweaters. It had all the team name and players. It was probably the best sweater a kid could have owned at that time if you were lucky enough to play in it. Thanks for doing this. Eric Francis in Cabo. Would Eric Francis be swim up bar guy? Would he be reading under the shade all day, or would he just be the weirdo guy hanging out in the lobby all day? I don't know.
I don't think Francis can get a beer anywhere. So I think he's begging the bartender for another drink. He's that guy. He's probably down there getting his tips frosted, back in the late 90s, right? He was the media guy for the Calgary Sun when I was back playing for the Hitmen in the late 90s. And he'd hop around the dressing room every once in a while and be like, who's this guy with the frosted tips showing up? Could barely spell, couldn't put a sentence together, and all of a sudden he's a reporter for reporting on the Calgary Hitmen. So I'm sure he's begging for beer right now, and nobody's serving
him. Big rum guy. I don't know if you're watching this Sweden-Italy game. Sweden's up 3-2. The Italian goalie just made a 6 save on a breakaway. It looks like he might have torn his groin, and I'm not even joking, or there's some sort of issue with his knee. Let's talk Olympic hockey first, Krahn. And as Finland found out today, the favorites are not always the favorites. They lose 4-1 to Slovakia. International hockey is a weird thing sometimes. And I think personally we could see it at the Olympics this year.
1,000%. And too, like when you're a team like Finland, they usually make it hard on themselves in round robin play, right? They squeak in, they're the bottom team, and then they make a name for themselves in the playoffs or when it matters most. And when you're playing, like Slovakia is no slouch, right? They had 16 shots on net today, and they scored 4 goals. Finland had 31. And shots aren't the end-all, be-all, but I believe Finland kind of carried play a little bit, and Slovakia made the most of their opportunity. Today, I was just watching the Sweden-Italy game and until the end of the second period here, and Sweden's got, 41 shots on net, and the Italians have 11. And there's no
50,
business.
It's 50-12.
Like, come on, right? And for the Italians being the home country, they have everything to gain and nothing to lose, right? You're playing against a powerhouse like Sweden. Sweden's going to win that game 4-2, and they could crush them 30-0. But because it's just that atmosphere, it's that game, you just have to win. It doesn't matter how much you win by. You just have to win. You have to get in. I'm sure Finland will be fine. They don't like losing the first game, but the Finns, as you know, they're a blue collar people. They battle hard, and they get kicked every once in a while, and they get back up and they keep going.
Italy was forced to pull their goalie that just made 48 saves, and now they have the other. He legitimately got hurt on that breakaway. It was a 6 save. I'm sure you'll see it later. Canada. They start tomorrow. Czechia, they're deep, obviously. What intrigues you about Team Canada?
For me right now, there's 2 things. Macklin Celebrini, I'm very curious to see how he does at this tournament. He played in the what's that tournament at the end of the hockey? Yeah, and he showed up. He played well. You got to play with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby, and he's back at it again. He's having a hell of a year. I think right now they have him slated with Tom Wilson and McDavid. Is that the top kind of the top line? We'll see how it goes. There's so many good players on that team. So his performance, I'm actually really curious about. And then obviously goaltending, right? Like Binnington has been a tire fire for the last 2 years, aside from being phenomenal when Canada need him most in the Four Nations Cup, a made-up tournament that the trophy didn't matter. It was just beating the Americans. And so you saw him and how well he played, especially in that overtime. And I would imagine that he would get the start, and it would be his net to lose. But with a guy like Logan Thompson coming through, I'm going to see how much of an opportunity he gets. I think that's up to Binnington. If Binnington plays well, we won't see much of Thompson. But if Binnington falters, we're going to see a bit more of Thompson. But the goaltending thing is always something that intrigues me no matter what, whether it's Eddie Belfour, Roberto Luongo, Martin Brodeur, Carey Price. I always used to be a sure bet in Canada who you'd have a net. And for the last little bit here, it hasn't been the case, but Binnington's definitely the front runner, and I'm very curious to see how he does.
Let's stay on goaltending then, and then we can shift back to lines, because you, as a former professional goalie, I remember Salt Lake City, and where Cujo, it was kind of supposed to be his net. He was the guy. He was playing really well, and then we lost to Sweden, and then they had to do the pivot, and maybe they were always going to go to Brodeur, but then they went to Brodeur, and then Brodeur ran the table for us and won. For the goaltenders, do you think? And Binnington seems like a really emotional guy, and goaltender wise, do you think that there would probably be some nerves there to be like, well, if I don't, they're probably going to go to Thompson, and then they even have Saskatoon boy Kemper. Do you think that there'd be some uneasiness there?
Yeah, I do think that Binnington's leash will be short. He's obviously, he won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues, brought him back from nothing to Stanley Cup champions against the Boston Bruins. I think it was in 2019. He was average at best in the Four Nations Cup until they needed him the most. I do believe a guy like Binnington is a gamer, and you speak about being emotional. For a goaltender, I played against or with very few guys that if they were emotional, that they were any good. Emotions can bring out the worst in people, and especially goaltenders, because your teammates rely on you to be calm, cool, and collected. Whether you're letting a bad goal, whether you make a great save, it's just they just want to see ice water running through your veins. And I mean, Tim Thomas is a prime example of a guy that could play with emotion and arguably play better when he was fired up or heated up. A guy like Jordan Binnington, a lot of his emotion early on in his career was based off immaturity. I feel he was just doing stupid things that made no sense. He's kind of cut a lot of that crap out, for lack of a better term, but he runs hot. And when he's going to be going through his Olympic journey here right now, he's got something to prove. And I think with him being in St. Louis the last couple of seasons, things haven't gone really great. He hasn't been overly spectacular. He hasn't got them into the playoffs. He hasn't been a key performer for him, or at least up to his expectation. But I think going back to being a gamer, I think this is a tournament for Binnington. There's not many games. It's kind of one and you're done type scenario. You play 3 round robin games, and I still would go back to his experience of being in Game 7, winning in Boston, right? Going overtime against the U.S. in the Four Nations Cup. Like, when it matters most, he has proven that he can do it. So Canada just needs to win. I wouldn't get too overly concerned of how much they beat teams by. I mean, the Czechia is going to be a great test. Switzerland's going to be the next one, and I think they play France on Sunday, and that's if they beat France 2-1, everybody's going to be like, oh, we're all scared. But you just got to beat these teams that have no business really being in the tournament. You just got to win. And so I think for a guy like Binnington, once the games matter most, he will be able to put it on. I'm a huge fan of Darcy Kemper. I think he is phenomenal. He's a gamer. He's won a Stanley Cup as well, right? He's a good old Western League boy. You said he's from Saskatoon, played for the Red Deer Rebels. The guy, like, big body, very athletic, super competitive too. He's got a bit of a temper on him too, as you guys have known over the years too. You can see his body language last year in the playoffs against Edmonton, or I would say the last 3 years. But for him in particular, like, he's a fiery competitor. And they have 3 good goaltenders. Logan Thompson, we haven't seen what he can do on a big stage yet either. He's got his big contract. He's been playing well for the Washington Capitals, but he hasn't obviously been in the big moments yet. And so you're going to see exactly where everybody fits. But Binnington, for me, is my guy.
Brent Krahn's joining us on Inside the NHL. He's stepping in for Eric Francis here. All your years playing, especially pro, you could even go to junior too. Who was the most emotional goalie that you had to share a net with?
Boy, that's without even thinking about it, the first person that comes to mind is Andre Pavlich. He played for the Winnipeg Jets for a long time, Atlanta Thrashers. He was a Czech guy. You could see how hot he would get. He just physically, when he was upset, you could just see him kick stuff and swing his stick and shake his head and do all this. Like, my very first game in the American Hockey League was against the Providence Bruins. And I get called up from the East Coast Hockey League, and who's in net across from me is Tim Thomas. And I didn't know who this guy was. I just knew I was looking at the game notes before the game, and he's whatever. At the time, I was 21 or 2, or I can't remember. He was 27 or 28. And we ended up losing the game, but throughout the game, we lost 4-3 at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence. And this Tim Thomas was he's flying around, pushing his net off the moorings. He was shaking his head. He was chasing the referee down. He was losing his marbles. And in my mind, I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, no wonder he's in the American Hockey League. You know what I mean? And I'm a rookie puke who has just been there for a handful of games. And I'm watching this guy who's been around for almost 10 years longer than I have, watching him lose his marbles. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, this makes no sense. But he had turned out to have one hell of an NHL career, won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins. And we've seen him with him and Sean Avery. Remember that when Sean Avery hit him in the back of the head with his stick at the blue line and Tim Thomas is chasing him around, right? Like, hey, good old Manitoba boy, Ronnie Hextall, with the Philadelphia Flyers, right? Like, watching him chase Chris Chelios around the ice. And then the funny part too, obviously I'm very fortunate to be a part of the Calgary Flames alumni, albeit for my short cup of coffee in the National Hockey League. But you got the old boy there from Hannah, Alberta, Lanny McDonald. And if you ever get a chance to go on YouTube and watch him and Billy Smith fight, and Billy Smith's calling off the D and the forwards, like, no.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago on the show after the goalie fight. One of the ones that I remember, it wasn't a goalie fight; it was a goalie and Lanny with that bad Northlands helmet,
Yeah.
and then Billy tells the D man, "No, I got this."
Yeah. And I show my son that, and I'm dying laughing. My son's 14, and it's like, this is like, and so I Lanny, I always give him a hard time. It's like, he hates goalies. He wants to fight all of us, right? But at the end of the day, Billy stood up for the union, and they went toe to toe. And I'm obviously kidding, but there's when you go back to your earlier question about emotions and goaltenders, and it's not normally. Patty Waugh was an emotional goaltender, right? We've seen him lose his marbles. Yeah. The fights between him and Mike Vernon.
Eddie Belfour, another Manitoba guy, he was emotional.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you remember those exchanges in the old Chicago Stadium with Mike Keane and Eddie Belfour when Keenan would pull Ed and Ed would have his helmet on and they'd go at it back and forth. And like, there are certain guys that can play with that emotion, and there's not many of them. I personally was never one. That when emotion got into my game, I stopped worrying about the puck and if I was going to stop or not. I was more concerned about who I was going to spear or whack or punch in the back of the head when they weren't looking, right? And that took away from my game. So I had to bottle them up, right here. There's still a lot of emotion trapped from right here to right there that hasn't been dealt with yet. But you got to be in charge of that.
Is your son a goalie?
Yes, of course.
So right? How are you as a goalie parent? Are you anything like your parents were?
So the hardest part is, like, when I was a kid and I was playing goal, my old man would, like any goalie parent, would stand in the corner of the rink, wouldn't sit with the parents, didn't want to hear nothing. Oh, we should have had that. Oh, that was a mistake. Oh, what's he doing? Oh, we need a better goaltender, all that stuff. So my dad would sit in the corner. So when my very first game in Brandon, I was playing obviously with the Calgary Hitmen, but we'd come to Brandon, and so my family would come out and the extended family. My dad sat in the van outside with a coffee and listened to the game on the radio because he couldn't handle people, like, oh, that Krahn sucks. Oh, he's a joke. Oh, he should have made that save. And my uncles on my mom's side would always give my dad a hard time. And my dad would just, he had it took a toll on him, let's say, right? Yeah. And so I always thought when I was playing, it's like, Dad, I'm the one stopping the puck, relax. And if I'm not stopping the puck, I'm not getting overly worked up over it. I'm doing my best. And it was easier to play than to watch. So I always thought if any one of my kids wanted to be a goaltender, I'd be the coolest goalie dad. I'd be calm. I'd be cool. I'd be like, hey, you're just trying your best. Just go out there and have some fun, and I'll help you along the way. I'm a terrible goalie parent. I can't even watch my son play. There's so many things that he does that I never like in terms of his approach. Like he doesn't like things that don't bother him that bother me, and I can't say it because I don't want him to overthink things, right? So I'm like, I can in warm up. He just stands there half the time and lets stuff in. And I'm watching, like, you got to get ready. And I'm losing my mind. I'm texting my wife because I'm the assistant coach. I'm texting my wife on the bench. I'm like, this is embarrassing. I can't watch this. It's off. Like, and I'm already melting before the game's even started.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm just like every other goalie dad. It doesn't matter. There's like when he makes a save, I'm relieved. When he lets one in, I'm like, what were you doing? When he goes out to play the puck, I'm like, what do you I'm just questioning everything. And so my son will come to me in the intermissions because he's 14. He's just playing Calgary minor hockey here. And he comes to the bench. He's like, Dad, I saw you shaking your head. I'm like, don't pay attention to me shaking my head. You just worry about stopping the puck, right? And I'm not shaking. I can't control it. You know what I mean? So like, I'm better off just sitting in a dark room watching the game on Live Barn where he can't see my emotion because I can, as coaches, we're all, or as parents, we're all the perfect player. We should, this is what's happening.
I know.
Should be, like if I was in that situation, I'd be 100 out of 100. But when you're in that situation and you're seeing it in real time, it's different. So we all need tests in life. We all need challenges. And watching my son play goal is punishment for how hard of a time I used to give my dad about just relax and watch the game, old man, I got this. And now I'm getting paid back for that because he would say, but I have no control over the game. You do. And I can't watch you play hockey because it drives me nuts.
I can't. It's so funny. My boy's 14 too. And just the other 2 games ago, it was skating off the ice after the second period. And I was just like giving him like, where's the effort? It was more the effort thing, shaking my head.
Yeah.
And he yells at me. He goes, shut up, you're dust. Classic kid. So then I'm like, and then my wife will chime in and she'll go, you understand he's trying to win, right? Like he's trying his best. As the teacher comes out and I'm like, I know, but then back to your warm-up thing, I'm like, how come you're not practicing your backhand in warm-up? Like that's how you get it ready in the game. How come you're not practicing? And I'm just like, sometimes I just need to shut up, grab the Yeti and sit in the corner and have a stiff one.
Coffee in there. That's it. Right?
Yeah. What do you think? Okay, so we talked about Canada. Part of me, as we go through this, and Sweden just scored again, so they're up 2, but they got like almost 60 shots. Part of me is like, I don't know if the USA is going to be the team with Canada. And I know we look at the 4 nations. Like, I don't know about the USA when it comes to this, but they do have good goaltending.
Well, they do. They're going with Connor Hellebuck, which is fine, but I'd like to see Jake Ottinger in there more. I honestly would. But he hasn't been overly spectacular when it's mattered most either. In the Western Conference Final last 3 years, he's been average at best. This tournament's missing the Russians, right? And I know it's a sensitive topic, so I'm not going to get into it. But Canada's rival is the Russians, right? We played the U.S. a ton of times, and they are so good. But there's such a history between the Canada and Russia, right? So with the U.S., you can see all the hoopla, you can see all the media stuff, you can see the Kachucks having a blast. We saw what happened in the 4 Nations Cup. We saw the fights right at the start. And that was USA's 4 Nation Championship, was fighting Canada in Montreal at that one game. They thought that they had won the whole tournament. For a made-up tournament, there was so much on the line, right? This year, I'm more concerned about the U.S. defense and how well they move the puck, how well they skate. They're a super talented team, and they very well could beat the Canadians. And that's not like anybody can beat anybody when it comes to Canada, U.S., Sweden, especially. But predominantly when the chips are down and it's a big moment, you're proud to be a Canadian hockey player. And guys like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Cale Makar, Jordan Binnington, Shea Theodore, the list goes on. We have Sam Bennett on the team now, finally, which is nice because we talk about the reason why they chose Jordan Binnington is because he's a gamer. Well, he's been a tire fire for the last while, but he's a gamer. But then we don't choose Sam Bennett because this, that, and the other thing. Well, he was a Conn Smythe winner last. He's a gamer himself, but there wasn't room for him on the team, and now there is, which I think is fantastic. You got Brad Marchand. You got guys that can dig deep, and Canadians, for all their humility, don't make a lot of waves in the media. They go out there, they play their game, they take their licks. And so for them to play the Americans, that's a huge pressure game because there's a lot of hype, a lot of hoopla, a lot of hot air coming from the South, and they're a good club. They can beat you, no doubt about it. But the Canadians go out there, they handle their business, and if the Canadians were to meet the U.S. at some point, that's what this tournament's all about. That's what best on best is. And you cannot, I get goosebumps thinking about it. I remember being at my local pub watching Canada play the U.S. the Four Nations Cup in overtime, and the whole bar is just sitting on the edge of their seats because it's not even the U.S. It's whoever Canada's playing in a meaningful moment, and
True.
And then on top of that, there's obviously a lot of pride, and so once again we go back to the goaltending. It's Connor Hellebuck, and what is he? He's a fantastic goaltender. He won the Vezina Trophy last season. He's a great goaltender, but I'm a little bit leery of him because he hasn't been able to overcome that hump of getting to become a winner, and a tournament like this where he's having an off year, I can see him having a lot to prove, and I'm very curious to see how he's going to do. He could be a deciding factor. He really could, but at the end of the day, we have Sidney Crosby, right? Sidney Crosby is the ultimate leader. We have Connor McDavid. We have Nathan McKinnon. Who wouldn't want our forward group, right? Our defense is solid, and our goaltending. How many teams, what do they say now in the National Hockey League? They don't need a number one goaltender to win a Stanley Cup. We just need a goalie that doesn't let in bad goals and can play solid. We saw Aiden Hill do it with the Vegas Golden Knights, right? And when Darcy Kemper won a Stanley Cup with Colorado, it was him and Pavel Francouz. That they did it as a team. Yeah. You just need a guy in net that doesn't give up backbreakers, that doesn't give up goals at bad times. And that's what the Canadians need, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, I cannot wait to watch the game tomorrow against Czechia. I can't. This is best on best. This is what we've all been waiting for.
5-2 Sweden on top of Italy. We got about a minute and a half left. I'm wondering, and I wanted to ask you this because you played with him, I think it's for 4 years in Calgary. He's over there with Team Canada. Regina boy, Ryan Getzlaf. What's your favorite Ryan Getzlaf story from playing with him all those years in Calgary?
There's so many. So what I'll say about Getz, I'll never forget. He was 16 years old. He was a pencil neck little geek showing up in Calgary, and he was so talented, and we're all on the ice thinking, who the hell is this? He's smiling out there. He's, when you're 16 years old, and we were all 16 at one point, we all knew everything. I'm the hardest worker. I'm the most talented. I'm the best at everything. And he comes to training camp, and everybody's saying, there's Ryan Getzlaf. It's like, well, who's this Ryan Getzlaf kid? He sticks around. He's on the ice, and he's just such a happy, smiley guy, and we're like you're 16, look, try to make the team. He was so darn good. It was unbelievable, and he was the size of my pinky finger when I met him. I'm obviously quite a bit bigger than when he last met me too, but I'll never forget, he was probably 160 pounds, soaking wet, and he would be out there practicing, and then all of a sudden, I'll never, I think it was the second summer, he was at World Junior Camp in Calgary, and I was on the ice for a conditioning camp, getting ready for the start of the NHL season. I saw him, and he had all of a sudden, he had this big barrel chest. All of a sudden, it's like he hit puberty. It's like he went from Ryan Getzlaf to Ryan Getzlaf. You know what I mean? And the skill was always there. The will was always there. And sometimes I think too, the guy was never challenged enough because he was just so good. He could just, if you wanted to get to this level, he would just do this. He would just continue to out-compete, out-battle, out-will. And guys like him I don't think exists anymore. Honestly, he had that edge to him. He could be mean. He was pretty witty. He was clever. He could chirp. He could hit you. He would spear you. And those players don't exist. And Getzey, throughout his career, even until he lost his hair, he was still one of my favorite hockey players to the end of this. I still chat with him every once in a while. He's gracious enough to come on in Calgary with us every once in a while. I'm so happy to have played hockey with that guy. He's one of the best human beings and one of the best hockey players I've been on the ice with.
We'll have to talk more about him the next time we have you on, Brent. Thanks so much for doing this. This was awesome. Appreciate you filling in and stepping in. And yeah, it starts tomorrow. It's 5-2 Sweden. They're gonna wrap it up over Italy, but Canada, Czechia tomorrow should be a good one. Thanks, man.
Appreciate the time. Thank you so much.